Title: Biden's controversial deal with Iran to free Americans. In a politically charged move, President Joe Biden's agreement with Iran to release 5 imprisoned Americans in exchange for unlocking $6 billion in frozen funds has ignited criticism from his domestic opponents. This deal presents a complex dilemma faced by presidents, where they must balance humanitarian concerns with geopolitics and domestic considerations. Dealing with nations like Iran, known adversaries of the United States, requires tough negotiations and often results in political backlash. However, a president must weigh the moral imperative of freeing detained citizens against potential political or geopolitical consequences. It can be seen as an act of strength to engage with U.S. enemies to secure the release of Americans. Despite assurances that the released Iranian funds are designated for humanitarian purposes, Republicans, including former Vice President Mike Pence, argue that this deal may embolden U.S. adversaries and lead to terrorism in the Middle East. Critics also worry that such agreements create incentives for future hostage-taking by America's adversaries. However, the larger question remains, should a president refuse negotiations with U.S. enemies for the sake of hostages, or prioritize diplomacy to bring Americans home? Regardless of political considerations, each deal to free imprisoned Americans is an act of grace and generosity by a president willing to endure political criticism for the sake of human lives. In the end, the release of these Americans should unite Americans, transcending political divides. The White House faces increasing pressure from detainee families who utilize social media to advocate for their loved ones' freedom. This evolving landscape has changed the dynamics of hostage negotiations. As the 2024 campaign heats up, the details of this pact become mired in political rhetoric. Yet, it is essential to remember that at its core, this is a story of Americans reunited with their families due to the persistence of diplomacy in the face of adversity. In conclusion, this deal highlights the complexities of presidential decision-making and the challenges of balancing humanitarian concerns with political realities. Regardless of the criticism, the ultimate goal remains the return of Americans to their families and the preservation of human lives.